Hello, crypto world. Welcome to the Chart Historian. My name is Justin, and on this channel, I delve deep into crypto charts, exploring chart structures, fractals, and patterns. This is going to be a Casper video. In this video, I'm going to lay out the structure of the bull run. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is we could potentially be going into a phase in the Casper chart where things start moving quickly, and I may not be able to keep up with videos to stay ahead of the chart. Now, maybe I can, and if I can, I will continue to make videos, but I want to make a video that you can refer back to in the bull run structure. Okay, so I am using CoinTrader Pro, and the web address is charts.cointrader.pro. Now, this is today's chart, and the fractal that I have on this chart is from way back over here. This starts on May 6th, 2021. Now, this is a giant bull run. You're welcome to check out my last Casper video or the one before that, where I go into the structure that repeats during this time. Now, a lot of people don't think this part of the chart is legit, and I understand their thinking, but the reason why I go back to this is because today's chart is following it. So we have three different parts of the bull run and then the peak. These three different parts are corrective structures that take place within the bull run. Now, Casper, in this section of the chart, has had three bull run structures. Yes, three bull run structures. This is the most recent one. Here is the one that came before that, and the chart starts with a bull run structure. Let's take a look at this one. Now, I'm on a hour candle. I'm going to be on a 5-minute candle for this one and this one because it plays out very quick. So here's that bull run structure. Now, this one starts April 17th, 2021. Here are the three corrective structures and the peak. And let's go back to the very first one. Here are the three corrective structures. Now, this may just be a fragment of the first one. I'm not 100% sure, but the peak is over here. On today's chart, we are still in the first bull run structure. Let's zoom into this structure, and we'll take a closer look at these repetitive structures that take place on the bull run. They're corrective structures. My goal with this video is that you can identify which box we are in. Now, we've talked a lot about this first corrective structure. There's roughly three waves in it: wave 1, wave 2, and wave 3. On this one, it held its ground before moving up into the next bull run structure. However, if we go further back in time to this April 17th, 2021 earlier iteration, we see that it has three waves: wave 1, wave 2, and wave 3. However, wave 3 in this iteration comes crashing down all the way into wave 1 zone. Let's go to the first bull run structure that took place. That is over here. Now, like I said, this could be a fragment, but what I see here is potentially the first wave, the second wave, which I find interesting that it's the highest, and the third wave, and then it has this little tiny series of waves as it moves out of the structure. What I find interesting about this iteration is that today the second wave is actually the highest wave versus the third wave. And yes, I believe that it is most likely playing out at this scale. In my last video, I thought it could be potentially playing out on a larger time frame, but I believe it is playing out on the smaller time frame. So let's see what happens once this structure completes. Let's zoom back in. So we are potentially in this third wave. We don't know how low it's going to drop before it begins to move out. However, once it begins to start working its way up, be prepared for some potential pullbacks. There is a red candle. We are zoomed in a little closer. In the move up into the second corrective structure, we see this red candle here. Now, that is most likely going to be a pullback. On the second bull run that took place, we see that same pullback take place after leaving this first corrective structure. And we also see a potential second possible pullback. The very first bull run structure, we have what suggests is likely some sort of possible pullback as well before going into the second corrective structure. Okay, so here we are back at this large bull run structure. Now let's talk about this second structure. Okay, so here we are zoomed in. So price gets above the high of this first corrective structure. There's that possible pullback. So I recently just changed this. For those of you who have seen my Patreon deep dive into this bull run structure, I initially had this just as this, and this correction was in between, similar to this, in between the two different structures. However, I believe that this should likely be more like this. And the reason I believe that is I think either of these corrections can be of a similar size. So I think it's worth making it all one big structure. This is similar to what XRP does, by the way, in one of its bull run corrective structure. Actually, its second bull run corrective structure. So it's very similar. Essentially, there is the first half and then there's the second half. Now, this first half, we can see that it has two parts, and I'd like to measure this decline. So this is roughly a 25% decline. Now, I don't know if today's will do that. Let's jump back to the one that came before this, the bull run that came before this bull run. So here's that second corrective structure. This is the second bull run structure that took place. And we can see the same thing. So there is the first pullback that has two separate kind of parts to it, two waves. It moves up into the second half of the correction. And in this case, it also has two waves. Now, let's measure the decline on this one. So this one's roughly 20%. Now, let's go to the very first iteration of the bull run structure. So here's that second corrective structure on the first bull run that took place on the Casper chart. We can see that there is one main pullback. There's a hint that this could be potentially a wave or another pullback. And then we see another hint of the second half of this correction. So this bull run took place in a very small time frame. Because it played out so fast, it's very pixelated. It's not a lot of detail in it. But we get the gist of what is likely to repeat on today's chart. Now, let's measure to see the decline on this one. So this declined roughly 8.76%. Now, on all of these declines, these measurements, I could be off, so it's a rough idea, but hopefully you'll get the point. This one was 4.79. So we should expect a 5 to 25% decline that could take place in this second corrective structure. So once you see something similar to this play out, where it moves up, does the first correction, and that correction is in two parts, this little flat part could also be a bounce, so be prepared for that. It moves up, does the second correction, and then it continues to move up aggressively. We are entering into the third corrective structure. Now, this corrective structure, I'm going to be honest, it has the potential to freak most people out. In fact, I venture to say that a lot of people are going to think that this is the peak, just the way it plays out. Let's zoom in on this. So in this iteration, it moves up to a peak and then declines, moves back up again, goes down even further, almost like an ABC, if you will, A, B, C, and then it begins to recover. This correction, at least this iteration of it, this one from the peak roughly to the trough declined 50%. So that is a large decline, people. You need to mentally prepare yourself for this. This is not going to be a pretty, at least we don't know how deep today's third corrective structure will go, but it has potential to make people cry. Let's go back to the second bull run iteration. Okay, so here we are at the second iteration of the bull run. And we can see that after this second corrective structure, which is in two parts, it moves up aggressively. Price just rockets out of this box into what will be the third correction. In this one, it doesn't have a bunch of waves. It just comes crashing down and then bounces back up and then falls. But the low was put in over here. So it could potentially play out like this as well. Let's zoom in on this. Here we are zoomed in, and let's measure what this decline was. So roughly 40%. So large decline, people. Now, there's something important to understand about repeating structures or fractals that repeat. The fractal repeats, but the timing, the height, and the depth, all that is going to be original and unique to the new iteration. So what that means is we don't know how today's structure will play out in the sense of how high it will go, how long it will take to play out, or how deep something can decline. All that is going to be new to what is going to be repeated. And since it's going to be new, we can't predict it. But what we can do is get a rough idea of what this structure throws at us. And in this case, we see a nasty decline. Let's go to the first bull run iteration. Okay, so here is that third corrective structure. So price rockets out of that second corrective structure, comes to a peak, and then just reverses on itself and falls like a lead weight. It comes to a bottom and then slowly starts working its way up through a series of waves. Now let's measure this decline. So this one was roughly 70.29%. Again, I could be off on some of that. Folks, this just underscores the trauma that this corrective structure is going to throw at the poor, unaware investor. They're probably going to think this is the peak and the bull run is done and over with, but it will make it out of this. So let's examine this peak. So it rockets up, and this is the parabolic phase. It's the blow off top. It comes to a peak, and this peak, I'm on a 5-minute candle, and let's zoom in. Look how quick this peak is. Now, once again, this played out on a very small time frame, so it's a very pixelated view of this bull run structure. Let's go to the second iteration and examine that peak and see if there's a little more clarity to it. So here's the second iteration of the bull run structure, and we see that this peak does have some more clarity to it. Let's zoom in. Okay, so here we are zoomed in closer. Now, this is not very clear, but it is a little clear. We can see that price moves up, and it's unfortunate that we don't know what takes place on the move up because it takes place so quick. It's a very pixelated look at this, but what we can see is that there are different levels to this peak. So it moves up, goes flat, it moves up again, goes flat, and then just plummets. So let's now move to the most recent bull run structure. Okay, so here is the most recent bull run structure. This is the very big one. And as we can see, it moves up. There's a little bit more clarity to this. What I'd like to do is I'd like to look at this on a 5-minute candle. Okay, so here we are on a 5-minute candle. This gives us some more clarity. So we can see that the move up does have pullbacks along the way. Now, how clear this is it's still not very clear, and I don't want to necessarily get too far into counting this because I don't know. On the XRP chart, you can actually count this, the pullbacks or the moves up to the peak. I don't know how this one goes. The data's not that good on this. However, once you start seeing a large pullback compared to all these other ones, you know that we've entered the peak. Now, this peak, at least this one here, consisted of 4 different smaller peaks. Here's the thing about peaks. Peaks are wild places. They're hard to predict. They don't necessarily repeat like the rest of the structure might. However, we can't rule out something similar to this where there are potentially 4 peaks. The second bull run structure also had a peak that moved up just like this one, so maybe that will also play out. Here's the takeaway with this peak. It's fast. It's going to last a short amount of time. So you really want to see it coming and be ready to act, because once it leaves this peak, it's a sharp decline. So my suggestion is stay up at night if you have to, stay home from work if you have to, be ready to catch this because it is going to be fast. Maybe be on a very small time frame like I am on this chart. This is a 5-minute candle. I'll leave that to you. Now, if you choose to not sell here, be prepared for the large decline that comes. So here we are on today's chart. Now, I don't know how high this will move up. I'm just matching this fractal, and by the way, is this structure right here, the very big one. I just matched it roughly to this size here. See how this one varied? So we should expect some deviation, but we're basically not looking for exact similarity, but we're looking for functions. So it moves up, does that first correction, moves up to the second correction. This is the second corrective structure. It moves up, has that nasty pullback on the third corrective structure, and then it rockets all the way up to the peak. Where this goes to, I have no idea. How long it takes to play out, I have no idea. How deep these declines will be, I have no idea. And the reason why I don't know is because the timing, the height, and the depth is unpredictable when it comes to this type of technical analysis. This type of technical analysis is awesome in the sense that you can have a good idea of what is coming down the road. You just don't know the height, the depth, the timing. So that is the drawback of this type of technical analysis. You can use Fibonacci extensions maybe to see where you think this could go. I hope I have given you something to work with. If I'm not able to create videos during this move up, it could potentially play out fast. You have this video that you can reference back to and look for functions. So that's what you're looking for. You're not looking for this doesn't look exactly like the other one. No, we're looking for the second correction should have two parts to it. The third correction should have a large pullback. Once it gets above that high of that third correction, you know we're headed to that peak. That peak we know is going to take place in a small amount of time. I believe with this video you can navigate the bull run. Sure, there's going to be curveballs. It's going to look different, just like today's chart looks a little different than what the fractal shows. Let's zoom in so you can see. It does have some similarities to its past right here. We can get a lot of these any part of the structure. So I think this move up was really just this little wave right here. It just shot up. That kind of stuff can happen. Those are curveballs. So just be prepared for stuff like that. But the overall structure should play out. The functions that I just explained to you, those things should play out. Well, I hope this video was helpful. If you did find it helpful, it'd be much appreciated if you hit that thumbs up button. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. But if you did enjoy this video and you're not yet a subscriber, I recommend hitting that subscribe button. I'll continue to follow up on this chart as it continues to develop. And by the way, after the bull run, we go into a very long, I don't know how long it will take to play out, but we go into a sideways range-bound time. Well, first a decline and then a sideways range-bound time. So it's going to have to cycle through all of that before it gets to the next bull run structure. For those of you who are looking for frequent updates, on my Patreon, I have a Discord server where I have a channel that's totally dedicated to Casper. I will be the most active on that Discord server. So if you want frequent updates on where I believe we are in the bull run structure, that's the place to be. My Patreon is a $5 a month subscription. You're welcome to join. I'll put a link to it in the description of this video. I'm so glad you caught this video. I hope you catch my next one. Have a great day, and bye for now.